and a good afternoon to you guys. How are you? The Chattering Magpie here, greeting you this Friday afternoon, and I am so ready to close out this work week by reading aloud with you our book, Persuasion. So happy to see some of you already here, and I'm sure there'll be others who are just getting the notification that we are live. Let me just say hello to the peeps on the chat. We got Noodle Something's Kimchi. Hey there, you're the very first one. Noodle says, I can't believe I actually got a Twitter notification. Hopefully I can listen to you on time. I hope you are able to join me on time. And I am so glad that I remembered to put the announcement on X, formerly known as Twitter. Happy that it worked, so I hope you're here. Also, Teal. Teal, you're so on point with those puns. I'm so ready for this. I've had a bath, filled Charleston triplicate. I'm ready to smith sandwiches at work as if out of clay. No hater shall be heeded, even if they seem as persuasive as a shepherd. Oh my gosh, you guys, extra credit for having done that. Oh my goodness. So you're on point. I love it, Teal. Thanks for including. If you guys don't remember, we have Charles. We have 3 Charles in this book. Okay, and of course we have shepherds and clays, and so yeah, awesome. I love it. Also, Little Butterfly says, an apple a day may keep the doctor away, but I'm ready for today's dose of persuasion. Hopefully Louisa Musgrove will be feeling much better soon. I know, man. Poor girl. Like, I know she was being like a little bit headstrong with, wanting to have her way. But again, she got a little bit misled by somebody she really admired who should have had a bit more sense, but no. Unfortunately, she's still young, so we have to go easy on Louisa. And I'm sure you guys know a Louisa in your own life who's just bubbly and energetic, and she's in the spring of youth or in spring of life and ready to get on out there and do things. So yeah, we can't judge Louisa too harshly. Poor thing, she got her head all smashed, poor thing. Anyway, so happy to see you here, Little Butterfly. We will get more updates about Louisa Musgrove, I think in this read along, or maybe in the next one. Who knows? We'll see. Also, Red Tempest says, I didn't know we were going to have one today until the Discord notification. I'm glad that you were also notified you were also helped out by the notification on Discord. I did remember to send one out just in case, so glad that it reached you on time. Happy to have you here, Red Tempest. Good afternoon. We also have Crusher says Lisa's recovery is heading in the right direction. Love it. Yes, indeed. Or at least we hope. Well, she did manage to open her eyes. She's now conscious. She's able to sit up a little bit, I think they said, but she's still not quite her old self. So yeah, I see somebody celebrating with the emoticons. I don't know if you're celebrating because you're here, because we have read along, or because it's the weekend. All of the above. Yeah, I'm also very happy that we finally made it towards the end of the week. Though I have to admit, Fridays, Saturdays are some of my busiest days ever in the week. I actually kind of like just turn into jelly on Sunday. So yeah, because Saturdays, it's when I'm the most busy. So yeah, I do look forward to Saturdays because I enjoy it, but also it's like Fridays I have to get ready for Saturday. Yeah, so I'm excited for the weekend for sure. But yeah, also bracing for Saturday. All right, so let's see. So hello to all the other peeps in the chat. We also have Noodles and Please Kimchi, who is here on time. Hello. Good day. You know what, Noodles says everyone is so witty, I can't compare. You know what, neither can I. I am so jealous of people who are witty, who can say something good or write something good. It takes me like about a day to sit down and just think and ruminate and think some more, and then I might get something good. That's why most of the time when I do content, I I script it, because it just takes a while for me to be witty or amusing. But that's why I'm always so delighted that you guys tune in, so you guys can hear my my fumbling with trying to amuse you guys. Anyway, happy to hear you guys. Red Temple says, how can I forget the 3 Charles? I was so confused. Exactly. So to remind those of you who don't remember, we have 3 Charles in this book. We have Charles Musgrove, who is married to Mary, who is Anne's sister. Charles Musgrove wanted to marry Anne at some point, but when she turned him down, he ended up marrying Mary like a year later. So that's Charles Musgrove. Then we have little Charles, that's his firstborn son, who's also last name Musgrove, but they call him little Charles. He's the one that fell off a tree and dislocated his collarbone. And then we have Charles Hayter, not hater, as in like the hater, though he did act like a hater, but hater. Charles Hayter. And he is basically, he and Henrietta, who is Charles Musgrove's sister, they had an understanding, you know, that kind of understanding, until Captain Wentworth came along and absolutely drove the thought of Charles Hayter from Henrietta's head, because Captain Wentworth is so much more handsome, so much more rich. And so Henrietta forgot for a second that she was actually in love with Charles Hayter. So of course Charles Hayter was hating on Captain Wentworth. He was very unhappy until things got smoothed over by the girls. So I think those are the 3 Charles we need to worry about. We also want to say hello to Time Lord Boy. Hello, happy to see you here. Was my birthday yesterday, so I got nice books and stuff. Ooh, happy birthday! Shall I sing to you a happy birthday, Time Lord Boy? I shall do it because I feel like I should. So, music off. I shall sing to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Time Lord. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Happy birthday, Time Lord. Hope you had a blast and that you got some awesome books. All right. So, okay, we need a character chart. Yeah, we do need a character chart, Noodles, Dumplings, Kimchi. But that's the best I can do for now. If somebody wants to make a character chart, be my guest. All right. Let's get this started, you guys. Let's see what happened in the last read along. So in the last read along, we did, I believe it was chapter 13 and 14, I think. Yes, chapter 13 and 14. It's her winter with Lady Russell in Kellynch Village. We had, we got a little bit of a teaser that maybe Captain Benwick, whom Anne had spent some time talking to and befriending, maybe Captain Benwick was romantically interested in Anne and would drive and make his way over to visit her and visit Lady Russell. But, they waited for him for a day and would, she was like, I'm going to take a walk, but it can't be a very long one because maybe he'll drop in when I'm away. So for about a week, she and Lady Russell were in suspense. Captain Benwick never came. And so, well, I guess that's unfortunate because now Anne has moved to Bath. However, Anne's prospects are not all that there's still hope. Captain Benwick wasn't the only one that seemed to show a bit of interest. Remember at Lyme at the beach, they kind of crossed paths with another gentleman whom we later learned was Mr. Elliot, their cousin, or Anne's and Mary's cousin, who he has family history. So there's still that, maybe, because we know she's going to meet him in Bath since he has apparently been frequenting her family lately. So we'll see. We'll see if she meets Captain Wentworth. No, Captain Wentworth is still in Lyme. He's out of the picture now. We'll see if she is going to meet Mr. Elliot, and if he remembers her. And how other things that happen in Bath, something's bound to happen in Bath. Come on. All right, let's do this, you guys. Chapter 15. Sir Walter had taken a very good house in Camden Place, a lofty, dignified situation, such as becomes a man of consequence, and both he and Elizabeth were settled there, much to their satisfaction. Anne entered it with a sinking heart, anticipating an imprisonment of many months, and anxiously saying to herself, "Oh, when shall I leave you again?" A degree of unexpected cordiality, however, and the welcome she received did her good. Her father and sister were glad to see her, for the sake of showing her the house and furniture, and met her with kindness. Her making a fourth when they sat down to dinner was noticed as an advantage. Mrs. Clay was very pleasant and very smiling, but her courtesies and smiles were more a matter of course. Anne had always felt that she would pretend what was proper on her arrival, but the complaisance of the others was unlooked for. They were evidently in excellent spirits, and she was soon to listen to the causes. They had no inclination to listen to her. After laying out for some compliments of being deeply regretted in their old neighborhood, which Anne could not pay, they had only a few faint inquiries to make, before the talk must be all their own. Uppercross excited no interest. Kellynch very little. It was all Bath. They had the pleasure of assuring her that Bath more than answered their expectations in every respect. Their house was undoubtedly the best in Camden Place. Their drawing-rooms had many decided advantages over all others which they had either seen or heard of, and the superiority was not less in the style of the fitting up or the taste of the furniture. Their acquaintance was exceedingly sought after. Everybody was wanting to visit them. They had drawn back from many introductions, and still were perpetually having cards left by people of whom they knew nothing. Here were funds of enjoyment. Could Anne wonder that her father and sister were happy? She might not wonder, but she must sigh that her father should feel no degradation in his change, should see nothing to regret in the duties and dignity of the resident landholder, should find so much to be vain of in the littleness of a town. And she must sigh, and smile, and wonder too, as Elizabeth threw open the folding doors and walked with exultation from one drawing room to the other, boasting of their space and the possibility of that woman who had been mistress of Kellynch Hall, finding extent to be proud of between two walls, perhaps 30 feet asunder. So compared to Kellynch Hall, which is a pretty big estate, Elizabeth's being so proud of her drawing rooms and her new house over which she's mistress of. It's kind of pathetic. She's like, this is not an upgrade, Elizabeth. Why are you so proud of, this new house? What are you, so happy about? Oh well. But this was not all they had to make them happy. They had Mr. Elliot too. Anne had a great deal to hear of Mr. Elliot. He was not only pardoned, they were delighted with him. He had been in Bath about a fortnight. He had passed through Bath in November in his way to London, when the intelligence of Sir Walter's being settled there had of course reached him, though only 24 hours in the place. But he had not been able to avail himself of it. But he had now been a fortnight in Bath, and his first object on arriving had been to leave his card in Camden Place, following it up by such assiduous endeavours to meet, and when they did meet, by such great openness of conduct, such readiness to apologize for the past, such solicitude to be received as a relation again, that their former good understanding was completely re-established. They had not a fault to find in him. He had explained away all the appearance of neglect in his own sight. It had originated in misapprehension entirely. He had never had an idea of throwing himself off. He had feared that he was thrown off, but he knew not why, and delicacy had kept him silent. Upon the hint of having spoken disrespectfully or carelessly of the family and the family honours, he was quite indignant. He, who had ever boasted of being an Elliot, and whose feelings as to connection were only too strict to suit the unfeudal tone of the present day. He was astonished indeed, but his character and general conduct must refute it. He could refer Sir Walter to all who knew him, and certainly the pains he had been taking on this, the first opportunity of reconciliation, to be restored to the footing of a relation and heir presumptive, was a strong proof of his opinions on the subject. The circumstances of his marriage, too, were found to admit of much extenuation. This was an article not to be entered on by himself, but a very intimate friend of his, a Colonel Wallis, was a highly respectable man, perfectly the gentleman, and not an ill-looking man, Sir Walter added, who was living in very good style in Marlborough Buildings, and had, at his own particular request, been admitted to their acquaintance through Mr. Elliot, and had mentioned one or two things relative to the marriage, which made a material difference in the discredit of it. Colonel Wallis had known Mr. Elliot long, had been well acquainted also with his wife, had perfectly understood the whole story. She was certainly not a woman of family, but well educated, accomplished, rich, and excessively in love with his friend. There had been the charm. She had sought him. Without that attraction, not all her money would have tempted Elliot, and Sir Walter was, moreover, assured of her having been a very fine woman. Here was a great deal to soften the business. A very fine woman with a large fortune, in love with him. Sir Walter seemed to admit it as a complete apology, and though Elizabeth could not see the circumstance in quite so favourable a light, she allowed it to be a great extenuation. Remember, you guys, that the fact that Elliot married somebody who was basically a nobody, that was what started, or what caused him to fall out with Anne's family, with the Elliots, with Sir Walter, because he had not... Since Sir Walter is the head of the family, you're supposed to
introduce the woman and then make sure that the head of the family gives his blessings. But no, Mr. Elliot was just like, who cares about you? I'm not going to ask your permission, and married the woman anyway. Thus crushing, because you remember, you guys, Elizabeth had hopes that Mr. Elliot would marry her. So now he's a widower. He's a widower because, and it's been fairly recent. So upon him being a widower, he went to reconcile with the family again. And he has been apparently forgiven. Mr. Elliot had called repeatedly, had dined with them once, evidently delighted by the distinction of being asked, for they gave no dinners in general. Delighted, in short, by every proof of cousinly notice, and placing his whole happiness in being on intimate terms with Camden Place. Now, this is, of course, this is entirely in Sir Walter's and Elizabeth's point of view. They think that he is so happy and cannot have greater happiness than in being admitted to their house. Okay, whatever. Let's let him have this. And let's see what Anne thinks of this. Anne listened, but without quite understanding it. Allowances, large allowances, she knew, must be made for the ideas of those who spoke. She heard it all under embellishment. All that sounded extravagant or irrational in the progress of the reconciliation might have no origin but in the language of the relators. See, Anne knows. The unreliable narrator. Still, however, she had the sensation of there being something more than immediately appeared in Mr. Elliot's wishing, after an interval of so many years, to be well received by them. In a worldly view, he had nothing to gain by being on terms with Sir Walter, nothing to risk by a state of variance. In all probability, he was already the richer of the two, and the Kellynch estate would surely be his hereafter as the title. A sensible man, and he had looked like a very sensible man. Why should it be an object to him? She could only offer one solution. It was, perhaps, for Elizabeth's sake. There might really have been a liking formerly, though convenience and accident had drawn him a different way. And now that he could afford to please himself, he might mean to pay his addresses to her. Elizabeth was certainly very handsome, with well-bred, elegant manners, and her character might never have been penetrated by Mr. Elliot, knowing her but in public, and when very young himself. How her temper and understanding might bear the investigation of his present keener time of life was another concern, and rather a fearful one. Oh man, Anne is saying like, yeah, I bet he came because he wanted to get closer to Elizabeth, but I'm afraid for Elizabeth because she's not a very, like upon getting to know her, she gets worse. Like the impression doesn't improve with getting to know her. So we'll see. She thinks though that it's Elizabeth's his aim. And Anne has, let's remember, Anne has a degree of insight because she's always been the outsider, and well, not the outsider, but nobody ever pays attention to Anne, but she's always sitting there quietly observing, and so we have to trust her instinct. Let's see let's see what's the deal with this fellow. Elizabeth was hold on. Oh yeah, hold on. Where was I? Okay. How Elizabeth's temper and understanding might bear the investigation of his present keener time of life was another concern, and rather a fearful one. Most earnestly did she wish that he might not be too nice or too observant if Elizabeth were his object, and that Elizabeth was disposed to believe herself so, and that her friend Mrs. Clay was encouraging the idea, seemed apparent at a glance or two between them, while Mr. Elliot's frequent visits were talked of. Anne mentioned the glimpses she had had of him at Lyme, but without being much attended to. Oh yes, perhaps it had been Mr. Elliot. They did not know. It might be him, perhaps. They could not listen to her description of him. They were describing him themselves. Sir Walter especially. He did justice to his very gentlemanlike appearance, his air of elegance and fashion, his good-shaped face, his sensible eye, but at the same time must lament his being very much underhung, a defect which time seemed to have increased, nor could he pretend to say that 10 years had not altered almost every feature for the worse. Mr. Elliot appeared to think that he, Sir Walter, was looking exactly as he had done when they last parted. But Sir Walter had not been able to return the compliment entirely, which had embarrassed him. He did not mean to complain, however. Mr. Elliot was better to look at than most men, and he had no objection to being seen with him anywhere. Mr. Elliot and his friends in Marlborough Buildings were talked of the whole evening. Who's this? Colonel Wallis had been so impatient to be introduced to them, and Mr. Elliot so anxious that he should. And there was a Mrs. Wallis, at present known only to them by description, as she was in daily expectation of her confinement. But Mr. Elliot spoke of her as a most charming woman, quite worthy of being known in Camden Place, and as soon as she recovered, they were to be acquainted. Sir Walter thought much of Mrs. Wallis. She was said to be an excessively pretty woman, beautiful. He longed to see her. He hoped she might make some amends for the many very plain faces he was continually passing in the streets. The worst of Bath was the number of its plain women. He did not mean to say that there were no pretty women, but the number of the plain was out of all proportion. He had frequently observed as he walked that one handsome face would be followed by 30 or 40, by 30 or 35 frights, and that once, as he had stood in a shop in Bond Street, he had counted 87 women go by, one after another, without there being a tolerable face among them. It had been a frosty morning, to be sure, a sharp frost which hardly one woman in 1,000 could stand the test of. But still, there certainly were a dreadful multitude of ugly women in Bath. And as for the men, they were infinitely worse, such scarecrows as the streets were full of. It was evidently how little the women were used to the sight of anything tolerable, by the effect which a man of decent appearance produced. He had never walked anywhere arm in arm with Colonel Wallis, who was a fine military figure, though sandy-haired, without observing that every woman's eye was upon him. Every woman's eye was sure to be upon Colonel Wallis. Modest Sir Walter. He was not allowed to escape, however. His daughter and Mrs. Clay united in hinting that Colonel Wallis's companion might have as good a figure as Colonel Wallis, and certainly was not sandy-haired. How's Mary looking?" said Sir Walter, in the height of his good humour. "The last time I saw her, she had a red nose, but I hope that may not happen every day." "Oh, no, that must have been quite accidental. In general, she has been in very good health and very good looks since Michaelmas." "If I thought it would not tempt her to go out in sharp winds and grow coarse, I would send her a new hat and a pelisse." Anne was considering whether she should venture to suggest that a gown or a cap would not be liable to any such misuse, when a knock at the door suspended everything. A knock at the door, and so late! It was 10 o'clock. Could it be Mr. Elliot? They knew he was to dine in Lansdowne Crescent. It was possible he might stop in his way home to ask them how they did. They could think of no one else. Mrs. Clay decidedly thought it was Mr. Elliot's knock. Mrs. Clay was right. With all the estate which a butler and a footboy could give, Mr. Elliot was ushered into the room. It was the very same man, with no difference but of dress. Anne drew a little back, while the others received his compliments and her sister his apologies for calling at so unusual an hour. But he could not be so near without wishing to know that neither she nor her friend had taken cold the day before, etc., etc., which was all as politely done and as politely taken as possible. But her part must follow then. Sir Walter talked of his youngest daughter. Mr. Elliot must give him leave to present him to his youngest daughter. There was no occasion for remembering Mary. His youngest daughter is Mary! And he's like, oh my goodness, okay. Sir Walter Elliot does not remember he has a daughter named Mary, apparently. She's of very little consequence. Anyway, and Anne, smiling and blushing very becomingly, showed to Mr. Elliot the pretty features which he had by no means forgotten, and instantly saw with amusement, a little start of surprise,
that he had not been at all aware of who she was. He looked completely astonished, but not more astonished than pleased. His eyes brightened, and with the most perfect alacrity he welcomed the relationship, alluded to the past, and entreated to be received as an acquaintance already. He was quite as good-looking as he had appeared at Lyme, his countenance improved by speaking, and his manners were so exactly what they ought to be, so polished, so easy, so particularly agreeable, that she could compare them in excellence to only one person's manners. They were not the same, but they were, perhaps, equally good. I wonder whose manners she is thinking of that she's comparing him to. Any guesses? Oh, I see somebody, okay. Crusher says, posted a Walter meme. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, I'll check it out. I don't understand what underhung means. Crusher points it out. He's like, yes, Mr. Elliot's very underhung. I don't know what that means. And I don't think I should look it up on Google because I think it's one of those things that may not be safe to look for while I'm on live. Many plain faces, right? So Sir Elliot, or whatever, Baronet, he actually makes it his hobby to stand on the street, the main street, and see the people passing by, count the number of women there, and count how many of them are ugly. Wow. Like, I get people watching. It's a very interesting exercise. But to people watch in order to count the number of uglies or uggos out there in the streets, man, that takes some... It's a very interesting pastime. All right. Ooh, Noodle Dumplings Kimchi says, this guy smells of a fortune hunter, right? So we get the account from his friend that the other woman had been the one to seek him and had eventually worn him down and had him marry her, or something like that. That basically the marriage and the persuasion of getting married was all because of the woman, and the woman was rich, the woman was beautiful, the woman was well educated, so she had some charms and something to recommend her. And so that went a long way to kind of like forgive the youthful indiscretion of marrying somebody beneath his station. Yeah. So again, it's totally different, not totally different. It's a very biased account. Let's just say that. Not to spoil, but come on, like, I don't know. He seems sus, right? Now, of course, of course, we have Jane Austen, who likes to paint characters, and sometimes we end up thinking that at the end of the book, wow, I misjudged this character. So we'll hold judgment until the very last part of the book, okay? Because it's happened before. There are many books where we have one impression of a character only for us to absolutely change our opinion about them towards the end. Okay? But it's interesting that you're sensing that. All right, continuing on. Where was I? He sat down with them and improved their conversation very much. There could be no doubt of his being a sensible man. 10 minutes were enough to certify that. His tone, his expressions, his choice of subject, his knowing where to stop. It was all the more operation of a sensible, discerning mind. As soon as he could, he began to talk to her of Lyme, wanting to compare opinions respecting the place, but especially wanting to speak of the circumstance of their happening to be guests in the same inn at the same time, to give his own route, understand something of hers, and regret that he should have lost such an opportunity of paying his respects to her. She gave him a short account of her party and business at Lyme. His regret increased as he listened. He had spent his whole solitary evening in the room adjoining theirs,
had heard voices, mirth continually, thought they must be a most delightful set of people, longed to be with them, but certainly without the smallest suspicion of his possessing the shadow of a right to introduce himself. If he had but asked who the party were, the name of Musgrove would have told him enough. Well, it would serve to cure him of an absurd practice of never asking a question at an inn, which he had adopted when quite a young man, on the principle of its being ungenteel, of its being very ungenteel to be curious. The notions of a young man of 1 or 22, said he, as to what is necessary, as to what is necessary in manners to make him quite a thing, are more absurd, I believe, than those of any other set of beings in the world. The folly of the means they often employ is only to be equalled by the folly of what they have in view. But he must not be addressing his reflections to Anne alone. He knew it. He was soon diffused again among the others, and it was only at intervals that he could return to Lyme. His inquiries, however, produced at length an account of the scene she had been engaged in there, soon after his leaving the place. Having alluded to an accident, he must hear the whole. When he questioned, Sir Walter and Elizabeth began to question also, but the difference in their manner of doing it could not be unfelt. She could only compare Mr. Elliot to Lady Russell in the wish of really comprehending what had passed, and in the degree of concern for what she must have suffered in witnessing it. He stayed an hour with them. The elegant little clock on the mantelpiece had struck 11 with its silver sounds, and the watchman was beginning to be heard at a distance, telling the same tale, before Mr. Elliot or any of them seemed to feel that he had been there long. Anne could not have supposed it possible that her first evening in Camden Place could have passed so well. End of chapter. All right, peeps, what do you think of Mr. Elliot? I know we got Noodles Dumplings Kimchi says that he smells like a fortune hunter. However, remember, Anne has a pretty good... Anne appreciates the fact that he's not entirely like their parents. Like, we have to give him credit. Her father and sister are absolutely self-absorbed individuals, but he seems to be an actual man of sense. Like, he's a good conversationalist, is able to engage her on the matter of Lyme while also making sure that the other father and daughter are not feeling like out of the conversation, out of the loop. And yet, Anne also feels, it's pretty cool that this guy whom I barely know, but who we met, is able to, form a connection in some way. And he appeared to be more interested about the misfortune that happened in Lyme than her own family. And they're kind of like related. So, the Elliots are related to the Musgroves by marriage. Mary married the Musgroves. So, we can't be too harsh, because he does seem to be like a person that Anne seems to appreciate. Like, she's like, I can't believe I came to the city dreading the worst, and yet my first night here, I actually have a pretty good time of it, in conversation with somebody who is, of sense. Stayed an hour. Okay, so let's continue on. We'll see more of Mr. Elliot. And how Mr. Elliot continues to get along with the family. Chapter 16. There was one point which Anne, on returning to her family, would have been more thankful to ascertain, even than Mr. Elliot's being in love with Elizabeth, which was her father's not being in love with Mrs. Clay. And she was very far from easy about it when she had been at home a few hours. On going down to breakfast the next morning, she found there had just been a decent pretense on the ladies' side of meaning to leave them. She could imagine Mrs. Clay to have said that, now Miss Anne has come,
she could not suppose herself at all wanted. For Elizabeth was replying in a sort of whisper. That must not be any reason, indeed. I assure you, I feel it none. She is nothing to me compared with... Oh my goodness, Elizabeth! Oh, dude, Elizabeth! She is saying that compared to Mrs. Clay, Anne is nothing to her. What? Yeah, this just shows her lack of sense. I assure you, I feel it none. She is nothing to me compared with you. And she was in full temp to hear her father say, My dear madam, this must not be. And yet you have seen nothing of Bath. You have been here only to be useful. You must not run away from us now. You must stay to be acquainted with Mrs. Wallis, the beautiful Mrs. Wallis. To your fine mind, I well know the sight of beauty is a real gratification. He spoke and looked so much in earnest that Anne was not surprised to see Mrs. Clay stealing a glance at Elizabeth and herself. Her countenance perhaps might express some watchfulness, but the praise of the fine mind did not appear to excite a thought in her sister. So Sir Walter Elliot is, remember at the beginning of the book, he was like finding fault in the woman, and Elizabeth was like, Anne, how unbecoming of you to even think that Mrs. Clay has descends upon our father. But I don't know, like little by little, I think that Mrs. Clay is getting closer to her target, or at least it seems like it. I mean, Sir Walter Elliot is like, you shouldn't leave us. No, stay with us. You have to stay with us at least to see the love. I think these people are so dumb. Like, he is so obsessed with beautiful people that he's like waiting for the chance to meet the beautiful Mrs. Wallis, who's like nothing to them. Like, honestly, oh jeez, these people are so dumb. Poor Anne, she has to live with these people. Who's doing the poor Anne counter? I think that was the first one. But I mean, poor Anne, first of all, having to live with these people in Bath, in a city she hates. And second, because she comes down the stairs and she overhears Mrs. Clay saying like, well, now that Anne is here as your companion, you don't need me. And then her sister's like, oh, no, it's fine. Anne is nothing to me. Just stay. And then her father also, who is in danger of being seduced by Mrs. Clay, praises Mrs. Clay's fine mind. Oh my goodness. Anyway, yeah. Dearest Anne. Yeah, Noodles Dumplings Kimchi says, Elizabeth, bad, rude, yes. Says, I will treat you like a cat and spray you with water. Please, somebody do this. All right, yes, I love it. Do it. Spray her with water. Where am I? Okay. The lady, that is Mrs. Clay, could not but yield to such joint entreaties, and promised to stay. In the course of the same morning, Anne and her father, chancing to be alone together, he began to compliment her on her improved looks. He thought her less thin in her person and her cheeks, her skin, her complexion greatly improved, clearer, fresher. Has she been using anything in particular? No, nothing. Merely Growland, he supposed. No, nothing at all. Ha! I'm surprised at that, and added, certainly you cannot do better than continue as you are. You cannot be better than well, or I should recommend Gowland. The constant use of Gowland during the spring months. Mrs. Clay has been using it at my recommendation, and you see what it has done for her. You see how it has carried away her freckles. If Elizabeth could have heard this, such personal praise might have struck her, especially as it did not appear to Anne that the freckles were at all lessened. Ooh, but everything must take its chance. The evil of the marriage would be much diminished if Elizabeth were also to marry. As for herself, she might always command a home with Lady Russell. Lady Russell's composed mind and polite manners were put to some trial on this point in her intercourse in Camden Place. The sight of Mrs. Clay in such favour, and of Anne so overlooked, was a perpetual provocation to her there, and vexed her as much when she was away as a person in Bath who drinks the water, gets all the new publications, and has a very large acquaintance, has time to be vexed. As Mr. Elliot became known to her, she grew more charitable, or more indifferent, toward the others. His manners were an immediate recommendation, and on conversing with him, she found the solid so fully supporting the superficial, that she was at first, as she told Anne, almost ready to exclaim, "Can this be Mr. Elliot?" and could not seriously picture to herself a more agreeable or estimable man. Everything united in him: good understanding, correct opinions, knowledge of the world, and a warm heart. He had strong feelings of family attachment and family honor, without pride or weakness. He lived with the liberality of a man of fortune, without display. He judged for himself in everything essential, without defying public opinion in any point of worldly decorum. He was steady, observant, moderate, candid. Never run away with by spirits or by selfishness, which fancied itself strong feeling, and yet with a sensibility to what was amiable and lovely, and the value for all the felicities of domestic life, which characters of fancied enthusiasm and violent agitation seldom really possess. She was sure that he had not been happy in marriage. Colonel Wallis said it, and Lady Russell saw it. But it had been no unhappiness to sour his mind, nor, she began pretty soon to suspect, to prevent his thinking of a second choice. Her satisfaction in Mr. Elliot outweighed all the plague of Mrs. Clay. Again, remember, Lady Russell was absolutely against Mr. Elliot before this, because she really resented the fact that he had acted so unfilially, like he had not respected Sir Walter Elliot in his choice of marriage. He had absolutely basically cut off ties with them. And so she's like, I will never, no, I can't, I don't like that man. But now she's like, yeah, he's so good and charming and all the good things of the world. He's like the perfect paragon of male perfection. I don't know. He does seem to sound like he's too good to be true. All right. I mean, she likes him so much that she's beginning to be like, okay, fine. Like, I hate the fact that Mrs. Clay's still with the family, but, the acquaintance of Mr. Elliot and adding him to my society, to a society of the family, outweighs the evils of a Mrs. Clay in the family. It was now some years since Anne had begun to learn that she and her excellent friend could sometimes think differently, and it did not surprise her, therefore, that Lady Russell should see nothing suspicious or inconsistent, nothing to require more motives than appeared, Mr. Elliot's great desire of a reconciliation. In Lady Russell's view, it was perfectly natural that Mr. Elliot, at a mature time of life, should feel it a most desirable object, and what would very generally recommend him among all sensible people, to be on good terms with the head of his family. The simplest process in the world of time upon a head naturally clear, and only erring in the heyday of youth. Anne presumed, however, still to smile about it, and at last to mention Elizabeth. Lady Russell listened and looked, and made only this cautious reply: Elizabeth, very well. Time will explain. It was a reference to the future, which Anne, after a little observation, felt she must submit to. She could determine nothing at present. In that house, Elizabeth must be first, and she was in the habit of such general observance as Miss Elliot, that any particularity of attention seemed almost impossible. Mr. Elliot, too, it must be remembered, had not been a widower 7 months. So she's trying to ascertain whether he has designs on Elizabeth or not. It's hard to tell because Elizabeth always is, as the lady of the house or the head, like the mistress of the house, keeping house for his father. She's the first one. She takes precedence. So, of course, they have to pay attention to her the most and listen to her the most. And Mr. Elliot can't. So it's kind of hard to see whether he's has designs on Elizabeth or not. But Anne is being observant, like a good girl. We're trying to see what are the motives. What does he want? Crutcher says this. At this point, Lady Russell's opinions should be disregarded. She flip-flopping. Yeah, well, again, Anne has learned, I guess probably too late, that, Lady Russell, she's not always right. She has learned. Bitter experience has taught her that. She's not always right. Okay. Mr. Elliot, too, it must be remembered, had not been a widower 7 months. A little delay on his side might be very excusable. In fact, Anne could never see the crape around his hat without fearing that she was the inexcusable one in attributing to him such imaginations. For though his marriage had not been very happy, still it had existed so many years that she could not comprehend a very rapid recovery from the awful impression of its being dissolved. However it might end, he was without any question their pleasantest acquaintance in Bath. She saw nobody equal to him, and it was a great indulgence now and then to talk to him about Lyme, which he seemed to have a lively wish to see again, and to see more of, as herself. They went through the particulars of their first meeting a great many times. He gave her to understand that he had looked at her with some earnestness. She knew it well, and she remembered another person's look also. They did not always think alike. His value for rank and connection she perceived to be greater than hers. It was not merely complacence. It must be a liking to the cause, which made him enter warmly into her father and sister's solicitudes on a subject which she thought unworthy to excite them. The Bath paper one morning announced the arrival of a dowager Countess Dalrymple. Let me start the test again. The Bath paper one morning announced the arrival of the Dowager Viscountess Dalrymple and her daughter, the Honourable Miss Carteret, and all the comfort of number blank, Camden Place, was swept away for many days, for the Dalrymples, in Anne's opinion, most unfortunately, were cousins of their Elliots, and the agony was how to introduce themselves properly. Anne had never seen her father and sister before in contact with nobility, and she must acknowledge herself disappointed. She had hoped better things from their high ideas of their own situation in life, and had reduced to form a wish which she had never foreseen, a wish that they had more pride. For our cousins Lady Dalrymple and Miss Carteret, or our cousins the Dalrymples, sounded in her ears all day long. Sir Walter had once been in company with the late Viscount, but had never seen any of the rest of the family, and the difficulties of the case arose from there having been a suspension of all intercourse by letters of ceremony ever since the death of that said late Viscount, when, in consequence of a dangerous illness of Sir Walter's at the same time, there had been an unlucky omission at Kellynch. No letter of condolence, no letter of condolence had been sent to Ireland. The neglect had been visited on the head of the sinner, for when poor Lady Elliot died herself, no letter of condolence was received at Kellynch, and consequently there was but too much reason to apprehend that the Dalrymples considered the relationship as closed. How to have this anxious business set to rights and be admitted as cousins again was a question, and it was a question which
in a more rational manner, neither Lady Russell nor Mr. Elliot thought unimportant. Who's talking here? Okay. Family connections were always worth preserving, good company always worth seeking. Lady Dalrymple had taken a house for 3 months in Laura Place, and would be living in style. She had been at Bath the year before, and Lady Russell had heard her spoken of as a charming woman. It was very desirable that the connection should be renewed, if it could be done, without any compromise of propriety on the side of the Elliots. Sir Walter, however, would choose his own means, and at last wrote a very fine letter of ample explanation, regret, and entreaty to his right honourable cousin. Neither Lady Russell nor Mr. Elliot could admire the letter, but it was all that was wanted in bringing 3 lines of scrawl from the Dowager Viscountess. She was very much honoured, and should be happy in their acquaintance. The toils of the business were over. The sweets began. They visited in Laura Place, where they had the cards of Dowager Viscountess Dalrymple and the Honourable Miss Carteret to be arranged wherever they might be most visible. And our cousins in Laura Place, our cousins Lady Dalrymple and Miss Carteret, were talked of to everybody. Anne was ashamed. Had Lady Dalrymple and her daughter even been very agreeable, she would still have been ashamed of the agitation they created. But they were nothing. There was no superiority of manner, accomplishment, or understanding. Lady Dalrymple had acquired the name of a charming woman because she had a smile and a civil answer for everybody. Miss Carteret, with still less to say, was so plain and so awkward that she would never have been tolerated in Camden Place but for her birth. Lady Russell confessed that she had expected something better, but yet it was an acquaintance worth having, and when Anne ventured to speak her opinion of them to Mr. Elliot, he agreed to their being nothing good in themselves, but still maintained that as a family connection, as good company, as those who would collect good company around them, they had their value. Anne smiled and said, "My idea of good company, Mr. Elliot, is the company of clever, well-informed people, who have a great deal of conversation. That is what I call good company." "You are mistaken," he said gently. "That is not good company. That is the best. Good company requires only birth, education, and manners. And with regard to education, it is not very nice. Birth and good manners are essential, but a little learning is by no means a dangerous thing in good company. On the contrary, it will do very well. My cousin Anne shakes her head. She's still not satisfied. She's fastidious. My dear cousin," sitting down by her, "you have a better right to be fastidious than almost any other woman I know. But will it answer? Will it make you happy? Will it not be wiser to accept the society of these good ladies in Laura Place, and enjoy all the advantages of the connection as far as possible? You may depend on it that they will move in the first set in Bath this winter, and as rank is rank, your being known to be related to them will have its use in fixing your family, our family, let me say, in that degree of consideration which we must all wish for." "Yes," sighed Anne, "we shall indeed be known to be related to them." Then, recollecting herself and not wishing to be answered, she added, "I certainly do think there has been by far too much trouble taken to procure the acquaintance. I suppose," she said, smiling, "I have more pride than any of you. But I confess it does vex me that we should be so solicitous to have the relationship acknowledged, which we may be very sure is a matter of perfect indifference to them." "Pardon me, my dear cousin, you are unjust to your own claims. In London, perhaps, in your present quiet style of living, it might be as you say. But in Bath, Sir Walter Elliot and his family will always be worth knowing, always acceptable as acquaintance." "Well," said Anne, "I certainly am proud, too proud to enjoy a welcome which depends so entirely upon place.
I love your indignation, said he. It is very natural. But here you are in Bath, and the object is to be established here with all the credit and dignity which ought to belong to Sir Walter Elliot. You talk of being proud, and I am called proud, I know, and I shall not wish to believe myself otherwise. For our pride, if investigated, would have the same object. I have no doubt, though the kind may seem a little different. In one point I am sure, my dear cousin, he continued, speaking lower, though there was no one else in the room. I am sure, my dear cousin, in one point I am sure we must feel alike. We must feel that every addition to your father's society, among his equals or superiors, may be of use in diverting his thoughts from those who are beneath him. He looked, as he spoke, to the seat which Mrs. Clay had been lately occupying. A sufficient explanation of what he particularly meant, and though Anne could not believe in their having the same sort of pride, she was pleased with him for not liking Mrs. Clay, and her conscience admitted that his wishing to promote her father's getting great acquaintance was more than excusable in the view of defeating her. End of chapter. Ooh, so we got a little bit of his opinion on society, on what's considered good society. He thinks, like, you know what, all these people with titles, yeah, they're not the best society. They don't have conversation, they don't really have anything worth sharing. But hey, their name will open doors to you everywhere when you are out and about. However, like, we may not agree on the subject, but I think you and I both agree that these people are an improvement upon this other commoner, Mrs. Clay, who is trying to get your father. So he also agrees with Anne that Mrs. Clay is not good for the father. Interesting that they should bond over that. Any thoughts about that? By the way, welcome, Akihana. Happy to see you here. Question says, these social gatherings are always about making connections. Yes. I mean, it's important to have social connections. You cannot discard them. It's always good to network. Don't burn bridges. That's what I always say. So, but yeah, like the fact, like, but I do agree with Anne though. Like the fact that her father and sister went groveling to get their cousins approval, the Dalrymple's approval. It's just so embarrassing, and she's embarrassed for them. She's like, oh my, secondhand embarrassment. And the fact that she is associated with them, she will also be seen as another toady. You know, somebody who is like going to be a bootlicker, a boot. How do you say? Well, anyway, somebody who's just going to be like trying to ingratiate themselves with somebody. And she's like, oh, so embarrassing. I don't want to be among you. Anyway, so this is Anne's society, new friends, new life in Bath. What do you guys think of the people she has met so far, especially Mr. Elliot? What are your impressions of Mr. Elliot? I think that we're going to stop today. Yes, that was 2 chapters. So we'll continue on Monday, as always. And I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. And, oh, by the way, I have to check out the meme. Okay, hold on. I do not want to leave without checking out the meme. Yes, sycophants. Yeah, that word. Question says, Anne values people for their character, intelligence, and kindness, regardless of their social status, while Lady Russell views rank and wealth as more important. That's right. Remember, when Anne went to Lyme,
and she met Captain Wentworth's friends. And also when she was at Kellynch and Uppercross and she met Admiral Croft and his wife, she thought they were like really good people. Like she's like, yeah, these are like, as you would call them, commoners. They don't have a title, but they are good people. I think she would much rather enjoy spending time in the company of these fine people than of Lady Dalrymple. By the way, here is the meme. Sir Walter Elliot, redefining narcissism since 1817. Yeah, so this is Sir Walter Elliot from, I believe, the 2006 version, which I love. You guys will have a kick watching him in action when we see this one. We are gonna have a watch party, don't you worry. You know what? I've been thinking we should have probably the watch parties before reading the book. That way, because sometimes the movie or the adaptation falls short after you read the book. I don't know, but then I also don't want to spoil the book for you guys. Well, anyway, we'll continue to doing this. By the way, somebody recommended a book. I think it was, yes, Teal. Teal recommended me a book, and I watched the movie, and I was like, okay, let's see if we can do if we can read this book. And I'm really inclined to doing it, but it's like, the audiobook I checked out is 57 hours long. That means it would be as long or even longer than Jane Eyre, which was 25 sessions. But it is a good book, you guys, and it's a classic, and it's also a public domain work. So anyway, still thinking about it. Yeah, Teal, if you're listening, I am seriously contemplating it. I might not, you know what? I've always thought that I would just read a book that I have already read in this channel, but why not do like read along a book that I have never read? I watched the movie, but I have not read the book. The only thing is, if I have to do voices, I would need to be prepared. Have to think about it. But anyway, those are just some thoughts. Thank you, by the way, for sharing this meme crusher. To Sir Walter Elliot, who makes it his hobby in life to watch people and judge them for being uggos. Bus. How to say it in Japanese? Bus. Something like that. Noodle Something's Kimchi says, when I worked in the restaurant business, I used to work with a terrible chef for free. Terrible experience, but I never needed papers or interview. Ooh, dang. You had to work for a terrible chef for free? Why? Oh my gosh. Did you at least get to keep all the tips? Like, how does this work? Where were you? Was this in the States? You should have sued their pants off. Oh my gosh. Why Noodles? How Noodles? Oh no. Oh, Time Lord Boy is heading off. Good night, Time Lord. Have a good weekend. Time Lord Boy also says social class was very important back then. Oh yeah, I can totally imagine. Such a class-based society. I'm sure it's like a vestige of it still exists nowadays. Everywhere, everywhere. But definitely places where they had titles and stuff like that. So you can tell why they were being such sycophants. All right. Well, yes, 57 hours. I have to check though. That was one audiobook. I don't know if I could. I mean, there is a book that I have listened to books that are that long. If you are a Brandon Sanderson fan, you will definitely have listened to the Stormlight Archive audiobooks, and they're like 50 something hours long. Let me see. Ooh, this one is 43 hours. Okay, 43 hours and 19 minutes. So I found one that somebody read in 43 hours. somebody read in 50 hours. Oh my gosh. You know what? If we do this though, I don't think I would be able to do this by myself. I would probably have to be like, you guys, like, remember how we used to do like voices back in the day? Like in the other channel, how we have highlights? I would probably have to break it up. Would you guys be open to that, you guys, to read along a book? Okay, so here's the book that I'm thinking of eventually reading is The Count of Monte Cristo. It's a great movie, really great series too, if you've seen it, the one with Gerard Depardieu. But it's a very long book, but it's a good one. It's really good. So anyway, would you guys be okay? Like I don't wanna be the only one to read it. It's just very daunting. We'll probably have to read it together. Like it would be like I would log into Discord and we would do the things again. Maybe not highlighting it, but definitely like splitting it into parts or roles or whatever. Red Temple says, with us it will be 100 hours as we chat. Yeah, probably. Teal says it is long, more book to love though. So Teal is really selling it to me. Noodle Something Kimchi says, I never had to worry about a job, now I changed industries and now I need thing like a cover letter. Ooh, okay. Look, looking for a new job is hard in this day and era. So if you are looking for a job, more power to you. You can do it. Hang in there. You deserve to be properly compensated for your work. So just demand your rights. Don't let people lowball you with a bad offer, because in this economy we need to get as much as we can for our labor and time. So Red Tempest asks, you don't want to read Shakespeare? Shakespeare. I do love Hamlet, you guys. I love Hamlet. I think it's one of my favorite Shakespeare works, Hamlet. We can read Hamlet. But I don't know. I don't know if I have the confidence to read Shakespeare. You've done all the Bronte sisters books, Magpie. I will not do all the Bronte sisters books because I don't like all of them. They just don't hit me. Okay, Wuthering Heights, I don't like that story. I'm sorry, I do not like Wuthering Heights. I did not like her style, that Bronte. I think her name is Emily Bronte, or yeah. I do not like that story. I just don't. And then there was one that Charlotte Bronte did. Another one, which was Villette and the Professor. They don't really fill me with such enthusiasm to spend a lot of time reading it. And then Anne Bronte did, I think she did Agnes Grey, and then the other one that she did was Tenant of Wildfeld Hall, which I didn't, well, I think I did read it. I didn't finish it, but I did read a big chunk of it. It just, the structure is really weird because you're reading the story and then suddenly like we get a huge chunk of just a diary. like this woman and this man, and then this woman leaves and this man's like, what the heck? And she's like, but here, have this journal so you can understand why I'm the way I am and what my past was all about. And then that's the end of part 1 or whatever. And then part 2 is just her diary. I'm like, yo, what kind of writing is this? And I don't know. I don't know. If you want to know about the story, you can watch the adaptation, which, by the way, let me pull it up. Tenant, Wildfell Hall. The adaptation was in 1996. Here we go. Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which this is so crazy, you guys. So, this is the pair. Hold on. So this is the pair. This is not the main pairing, though. Yes, the girl is a protagonist, but this is definitely not the main character. He looks like a main character, but he's not. He really isn't.
The main character, you guys, is Toby Stevens, you guys. Yes, remember Toby Stevens from Jane Eyre, Mr. Rochester? Yes, he did, here we go. He is the main character. Ta-da-ta-da! So it's a complicated story between this lady and the center, and the guy on the left, and the guy on the right. So it's something's going on there, and it makes for an interesting story. Check out the movie. I don't want to read it though. I gave it a shot, but I just couldn't. I bounced. I probably would maybe when I'm a little older. Like there's some books that I pick up like years later, and I'm like, this was pretty good. But it was because I had matured and grown and understood. My understanding as a person had grown, and maybe my understanding, if I pick it up again, maybe I will be more mature and dig it more. But for now, I'm like, oh, I don't feel like reading it. Maybe one day. But anyway, the weird thing about this, I forgot to say. Okay, so do you see this lady in the center? I forget her name is, but she was Mrs. Reed in the 2006 adaptation of Jane Eyre. It's the same adaptation where Toby Stevens, the guy on the left, the guy on the left was Mr. Rochester. So yeah, so they did this movie and they're both love interests here. So guy on the left and lady in the center, at the end, yes, they end up together. There's something going on with the guy on the right though, okay? I won't spoil it. But anyways, so 1996, they're the main character, male lead, female lead, end up together. 10 years later, she is the villainess and he is the protagonist, which sucks. So again, after 10 years as an actress, you can no longer be the protagonist because you're no longer young, but the dude can be a protagonist all the time because men can always remain bachelors until their 40s or 30s or whatever, and they'll still fine. But a woman, after she passes the 30-year-old mark, she can only be a Mrs. Reed, which is a shame because she's a really good actress. Tara Fitzgerald, yes. She has been in other BBC dramas that are really interesting. She's a really good actress. Anyway, so I feel like I've spoken a lot, you guys. So yeah, I'm thinking about it. What do you guys think we should do? I am going to read after this. I will read a book by Frances Hudson Burnett. It's a children's book, so and then I'll eventually return to another Jane Austen book. We will read, if not Pride and Prejudice, we will read Emma, which is a really fun one too. Let's see. All right, so Red Tempest never saw the movie, The Count of Monte Cristo. That's fine. You can watch it, or you can withhold from watching it and then read the book and not get spoiled. It's a good story. It's a really good story. Tio says, I'm game. Okay. Nice, says Noodles Dumplings Kimchi, but I'm not on your Discord. Why aren't you in the Discord, Noodles Dumplings Kimchi? Why? Seriously, why haven't you joined? I should probably take this opportunity to remind you guys that you can support me. Again, this YouTube channel is not monetized, so if you're enjoying these read-alongs, you can support me by leaving a tip in there. $3, $5, $10, $100, whatever you like. All you do is just basically put here like, yo, your name or nickname. Be like, the awesome one. You can call yourself that. You can be the awesome one. Or the awesome two. It can be like, Magpie, you are my favorite YouTuber on YouTube. No, more like, Magpie, please have this money to pay your rent. And then you tip. Okay. I am kidding with you guys. Well, I'm exaggerating, but that's as easy as it gets. And then if you want to join the Discord, however, you click on this membership tab, and then you can just join either one of the tiers. All the tiers give you access to the Discord. Like, you don't have to be a Zent to join the chats. Sure, you get like more things. You get all these things if you're a Zent. But you get quite a bit of stuff if you're a noble. All right, so, oh geez, this is a really long plug. I'm just saying that it's fun. Like, I really enjoy hanging out with the people here. We have events. We have a new event going on. Ooh, yes. Okay. So we have watch parties and such. We have memes. We have Ferdinand shrines. We have there's people watching stuff. What are they watching right now? Who knows? I'll leave them to it. All right, everybody. So that's today's plug. Hope you enjoy it. Oh, wait. Hold on a second. More stuff that I have to read. There's anime about that book, actually. Really? I didn't know there was an anime about it. Ooh. And then Tamler Boy says there was a good adaptation with Tony Curtis in it. Ooh, the Tony Curtis from Hollywood, golden age of Hollywood, of like era. I'm gonna check it out because I love Tony Curtis. By the way, Tony Curtis, he starred in one of my favorite old-time Hollywood movies called, it's a little cult classic, it's called The Great Race. Hugely hilarious movie based on The Prisoner of Zelda. Great book. Great movie. Crusher says, I'll read along, but dibs on Dante's. Ha! All right. You would have to appear early to claim your role. Like I said, every time we do a read-alongs where we have casts, you have to get there early to claim dibs. So yeah, you can say what you want, but you have to show up on time. Wuthering Heights is a hard read now in More Than People. Well, it is a hard read. Yes, it is. Akihana says it's a love triangle. What? Wuthering Heights? Or let's just say it's love encountered some obstacles and they deal with it differently. So Wuthering Heights, they deal with it differently than they do in Count of Monte Cristo. Just saying, okay, it's going to be different. Let's see. Everyone is entitled to not like some books. Yes, I agree. Heck yeah, men for the win. XD. Oh, what prompted you to say that? I have to remember what prompted you to say that. All right. Tamler Boy says, want to read the picture of Dorian Gray as I like Oscar Wilde. We'll see. We will see. Let's see. Oh, and then Tara Fitzgerald reminds you of Wednesday, Akihana. The previous Wednesday actors became the villain in the new Wednesday series. Haven't watched that one, the new one. So Akihana says, I see Monte Cristo, but can't remember the entire movie. Haven't read it either. You and me both. I did watch the adaptation. Red Tempest says, support your magpie. Yes, she needs funds for tea or coffee, people. Also, you guys, I have a problem. I do have a problem. I just ordered and received a sampler box of different flavored teas. And they're all delightful and I have no regrets. So I'm going to share with you on Twitter later on after I'm done my new collection of teas. Hey, it could be other things. It could be drugs, you guys. But it's not. It's tea. That's what I need my everyday. Everybody where I live knows that when I get out of where I'm working, I get up, go get the tea kettle,
fill it up with water, and I'll be like, anybody want tea or coffee? And I'll just make it for whoever wants to. So, speaking of which, I'm running a little dry. It probably needs a little bit of water. Oh, the response to the actors' ages? Oh, Crusher. Okay, it's for the men. Men for the win. Ah, Crusher. Ah, so unfair. Yeah, thanks. Red Tempest also clarifies, Crusher was talking about men can play the protagonist for a long time, I believe. Yes, that's true. That's why we're obsessed with keeping our faces young. So please do not, when you see your girlfriend, your mom, your sister, spend money, spend extra time to make herself, whatever she needs to do before she goes out, be patient with her. All right? Just be like, cool, do your makeup. I'll be over here watching my anime, and then we can go and have whatever. So just be patient. It's important for us to look our best, okay? It is. I every time, even if I go grocery store, I will go and do my hair, put in a little bit of makeup. Thankfully, I have a pretty good complexion that I don't need to put any foundation or concealer. I thank God for those genes that I have no need for any of that. I don't have blemishes. So it's just a little bit of eye makeup, a little bit of lip, and do my hair, and out we go. It's second nature, you guys. It's what girls must do sometimes. Yep. All right. I'm suddenly reminded of the nanny show. Oh, in what way? Getting ready, like being like very conscientious about, looking your best. More power to Fran. I love her. All right, everybody. I think I've dilly-dallied a lot, just lots of tangents here, and I'm here for it. But I think you guys should also enjoy the rest of your evening. I will also go and eat something. I'm a little hungry, not too hungry, so I'll just have something light for dinner today. It's 6:28. So I had lots of fun, you guys. Remember to like, comment, and share with me what you're gonna do for the weekend. Looking forward to seeing you guys on Monday. Until later, you guys. Thanks for joining me, by the way. I had oodles of fun. Bye.